We've been engaged for 6 months, together since 16. We knew and both realized that we were going to change as a person while growing up, and so communication has always been our number one priority. We have a great relationship and our wedding is in October. I was seriously excited until now because I feel really uneasy. He went on a 2-day work trip with his coworker Fiona. I have met Fiona once before at a company event and I didn't exactly like her. I'll be honest and say that she intimidated me and I feel insecure when I think about them spending time together. She's an extremely bubbly and very attractive, also very flirty, but she's married. I didn't like that they were going on this work trip together, but what can I do? It would been ridiculous if I told him he can't go because I don't like Fiona. Anyways, I decide to pick him up the airport. He was going to take a taxi, but I wanted to surprise him. They came out and Fiona didn't look too pleased to see me. She kept talking about how much fun they had together and at one point told me how lucky I was that my fiancé gives good massages. I was shocked and asked her how so, and turns out he gave her a massage after the first day. I don't think this is okay, and I wanted to confront him about it. Unfortunately, it doesn't stop here. Fiance went straight to bed when we got home, so I didn't get the chance to really talk to him. I went through his bag and I found the papers for the hotel they were staying at. 1 room booked for 2 persons, 1 queen-size bed and a couch that can be turned into a bed. I don't even know how to feel. I don't know if this is okay or not. At the very least, I wish he would have told me. On the other hand, I didn't ask about his hotel room either. I just feel super uncomfortable. I'm trying to resist the urge to snoop on his phone, and I feel terrible about it. I don't know what to do, and I'm just feeling lost. Please help me out here. I decided to snoop and I hit the jackpot right away. I unlocked it with his fingerprint, should have been the first sign. He claimed it was convenient. I scrolled through their messages and it was obvious. They were even making fun of me together. They've been sleeping together for months. Don't know what got over me, but I wanted to read everything they ever said to each other, and I did. Pretty sure they slept together just 2 days after he proposed. And from what I could gather from their talks, she wants him to leave me, but he's hesitant. But sleeping with her for months is okay, right? Not proud of my reaction, but I went a little crazy. Been with this dude since I was 16. I packed and threw some of his stuff and called a friend over and woke him up and told him he should leave. He confessed and begged for a second chance. I couldn't believe it, really. He left and only came back to grab more of his stuff. I blocked him everywhere and haven't spoken to him since, but obviously I'm going to need to be in contact with him to figure out the details about our finances. I don't know, I'm still hurt and upset, but not as much as I thought. Initially I felt like I was going crazy, and I feel so stupid for not noticing or finding out earlier. I wasted so much time with him. Somehow, because it's a full-blown affair, it hurts less. Oh, and there was no work trip. I mainly feel like an idiot for not asking more questions and blindly trusting him. My friend has been with me and she is always able to make me laugh. We went out together most nights and I've been feeling better. To top it off, I slept with one of his best buddies last night and he told me not to tell him lol. I was drunk and wanted revenge, and well, I guess I sorta got it, though I'll definitely be letting him now. Not much else to say. I guess I'm going to be single for a while and enjoy that. I seriously can't believe I was going to get married to this asshole. Turns out you never really know people. What do you think about the story? Here are some popular comments.
They may have not been on a work trip, but they definitely started their affair during work hours. Report both of them to HR and witness their careers implode as a result of their wayward genitals. Bring wine.
I work at a hotel and some companies won't even let same-sex coworkers sleep in the same room. I called bullshit on this right after the massage comment. Unbelievable.
Look, I'm sure a ton of high school sweethearts get married in their early 20s and lived happily ever after. But the older I get, the more of a firm believer I am that you should wait until at least 25 to even think about getting married.
I married the guy I'd been with since I was 15. We got engaged after 10 years and married 2 years later. He cheated on me within 18 months. Why wait until then? And if he'd done it before, why get married? Several months of denials and gaslighting for me to get proof. It was ongoing throughout, with 2 women. And when I left, he's on his knees crying and begging me to stay, saying it was a mistake. Some people want to have the cake and eat it.
He stayed with one of them for a year or so, cheated on her with the next one, then cheated on that one too with the other woman he cheated on me with, and they now have children. I pity her, TBH, because, he'll do it again, and she's got more to lose than the rest of us had. I have a partner now who I trust wholly, and life couldn't be better. Just a shame I didn't find him sooner.
Honestly, her first call should have been to their workplace HR and let them know they were fucking. Lots of places that will get you fired. Salt the earth approach. He can have this AF partner, but since both of them will be unemployed, they'll have nowhere to live and all the problems that come from that, and she can still screw his friends and let him know it.
He's had hundreds, if not thousands, of chances over those months. Every single day, he made a choice. Every single message, he made a choice. Every single time he physically interacted with his affair partner, he made a choice. Every single day, every single hour, every single moment, he had the chance to change things, and he chose not to.
I travel for work with my husband, and our company just gives us travel money. You can share with anyone. I've shared with coworkers and with my husband, at the time boyfriend, and HR was only involved in making sure we got the money deposited. So sharing rooms with men and women does happen.
I'm sure this will be a new perk at businesses countrywide. The new administration is effectively taking away all protections for workers and women. So you guys go ahead and pick out some female to travel with, and we'll put you in the same room together. Good luck, buddies.
Hope you let her husband know. Also, their company's HR department would love to know. Don't forget to let all your mutual friends and families know the truth before he spreads lies with some tall tale, how it never happened, and you're crazy and insecure.
I find comments on posts like this so weird sometimes. OMG, workplace should never put opposite sex people in the same room. A company will never put two especially opposite sex coworkers in one room. Gay people just don't exist, BW. Neither do ace people, or folks who just have zero interest in sleeping with a coworker. And bi-pan flexible people get a single room upgrade automatically since they're never allowed to share a room with anyone. It's an ingrained bonus. Small businesses with limited budgets never, ever have to send staff to travel. Yeah, no workplace should force people to share a room if the arrangement is untenable for any reason. All staff should get solo accommodation whenever possible. And these cheaters are gross. But it's weird that the comments on posts like this tend to focus on opposite sex room sharing equals bad policy instead of any room sharing equals bad policy.
Only time I've heard of sharing rooms in this way was two married people cheating on their spouses. They'd get the company to send them both on trips. They'd stay in the same hotel room, get dinner together, do all sorts of date stuff, just not near home, so they didn't get caught. Dumb fucks were submitting 2 expense reports, one from each, for the same hotel room. The company thought they were getting 2 hotel rooms, so they figured, why not put some cash in their pockets? They were caught by accounting, fired, and both ended up getting divorced.
Yeah, that's super sketchy. Even if nothing happened, giving massages and sharing a room without telling you is a huge red flag. At the very least, he should have been upfront about it. You're not wrong for feeling uncomfortable. Trust your gut and have a serious talk with him.
Thought OOP said F was married, so it didn't occur to OOP to give F's OA heads up. The company they work for too. Yeah, it wasn't a work trip, but employees hooking up may be against policy, especially if one is in a supervisory position.
My wife went on a work trip with a male coworker who happens to share our surname. The hotel were very confused while trying to offer them one room. No fucking way would any company want to put people in a single room without some seriously fucked up culture.
I mean, it is convenient, but you still have the PIN too. But the idea that you have to share the PIN with so as the default weirds me out. Maybe I'm just a very private person. I have shared the PIN since it's convenient sometimes though, but I'd never think of it as the default that you need to justify when you don't want to share it.
I have given my partner my phone and computer passwords and plenty of other info even for what is supposed to be my own bank account. It's almost always because I forgot something and needed her to do it over the phone. I trust her with my life, so I have no problem if she knows all my info. If I die, she gets most of it anyway. Now, if she demanded to know the passwords or something, I'd be less chill about it, but for me, I want her to know. We also just aren't into snooping or whatever. I have her iPad passcode and just use it to watch TV or read. I get notifications, but I don't care.
I also felt very confused by the way it was worded, but luckily I happened to scroll past another comment that helped me realize what she meant. To unlock them, some phones use a numbered code, some phones use a pattern to draw, etc. But a lot of those phones also have a fingerprint pad and/or Face ID to unlock. So if I'm not mistaken, what the OOP meant is that her ex was exclusively using the fingerprint pad and told her that it was more convenient than trying to remember a PIN or the drawing pattern, so she didn't have an easier way to snoop. This, however, must be bullshit since all electronics with biometrics force you to have a PIN as backup in case there's an issue. Therefore, I guess OOP had to wait until her ex was asleep, then grabbed his hand to unlock the phone that way. Again, though, that's just what I put together. That was a real badly structured sentence, lol.
I think OP will come to regret the revenge sex, but I'm not exactly able to put myself in OP's shoes. Just feels like it's stooping to their level in a way, if that makes sense. Regardless of that, glad she found out sooner rather than later. I'm willing to bet the coworker loses interest once he's single. Her flaunting it in front of OP spoke volumes. Just shitty people.
The nearly 30-year-old married woman who slept with a guy barely out of college and rubbed it in the face of his girlfriend he'd been with since they were teenagers. Ice gross. She's gross. I hope karma kicked her ass. And thank God OOP got out of that mess before COVID. Can you imagine?
This happened in the summer of 2019, so they would have been newlyweds when the pandemic started if she hadn't found out and they'd gone through with the wedding.
Considering that the AP was being so blatant about it, it 100% would have blown up during quarantine, and by then she would be stuck in the middle of a pandemic trying to find a new place and get a divorce. She seriously dodged like Neo, and she wasn't even aware how much after the fact.
As my handle implies, I've traveled on business for nearly half a century. I was never booked into a hotel room with a woman. I think anyone who tried to set that up would get a warning in their personnel file.
I have. A twin room, not a queen bed, obviously. Academia can be very weird, though. Can't see any company booking a queen rather than a twin room, though, regardless of gender. And it would be an extremely penny-pinching company that tried to make people share a room for occasional travel.
I've shared a room a few times with one of my best friends. We're both freelancers, so there's a reason financially, and we're both trusted completely by my wife. I've known my friend longer than my wife, and she was maid of honor at our wedding because my wife adores her too. Would never ever do it while working for a company, though.
Crazy how this guy just kept leading her on? Like, why? Just get some balls and go. He has a shitty backup plan anyway, so why get all insecure and beg for forgiveness? My question always is, if you don't want to lose it, why even entertain the risk in the first place? SMH, this happens much too often to be simple mistakes. At this point, if you willingly hurt someone you love to get your rocks off, you can only fix it by acknowledging this huge character flaw of selfishness.
Like said, no HR in the right mind would book the same hotel room for a man and a woman who's not married to each other. The reduced cost is never worth the risk. Even if they're very platonic and professional, what if one of them drinks too much and SA the other?
Lol, the amount of stories on Ask a Manager that describe this problem exactly days otherwise. Due to an incident years ago, my former employer doesn't even allow same-sex coworkers to share a room. Everyone gets their own. Either they have the budget to send people or they don't, but they do not mess around. This became an issue when a married couple wanted to room together and ran amok of the one-person hotel room rule.
I have shared sleeping spaces with a coworker exactly 3 times in 15 years. All 3 were in the context of remote fieldwork, and only one of those times was with an opposite-sex colleague for one night in a shared canvas wall tent. If I'm going somewhere that has any sort of commercial accommodations, I will be getting my own room or I'm not going.
I got paired up with someone for a hotel room during an interview once. The company scheduled a whole bunch of interviews for the same day and flew all the candidates out to their headquarters. They didn't tell me anything about it in advance, but when I got there, a company rep flagged me down and said I'd be sharing a room with another candidate from my college. Luckily, I knew here and we were friendly enough, but the company didn't know that. My girlfriend at the time was also understandably pissed about the arrangement. We ended up bonding, along with several other candidates, about how shitty the company was, and threw a party in our room between interview days.
My employer doesn't even allow them to be on the same floor of the hotel without additional approvals. Men on one floor, each with their own room, and women on another. Same gender can share rooms, but it requires extenuating circumstances and significant approvals from like 5 levels of management. Not every place is a giant corporation, though. I work with people who, upon hearing our policy, tell all kinds of lovely stories about adjoining rooms and attempts at sharing rooms from former employers, typically small, individually owned companies. It's a sad fact of life, but there's a reason that so many major corporations have the no sharing rooms policy.
Yup. My best friend and I shared a suite one time on a work trip, but one, they asked us first and only asked because they knew we were really good friends. And two, because it was a suite with separate rooms, beds, we just got it free with our conference booking.
My workplace almost did this to me. Last year, I was supposed to go on a 6-month work assignment to a different state along with 20 other employees. Problem was that it was tourist season for that area and they were having trouble finding individual lodging for all of us. It was suggested by the person doing the booking that we could double up. The union shut that down so fast that the trip was delayed several months. I ended up not going.
I worked at Next Gen and they had men and women sleep in the same hotel room in different beds, but you could opt to only stay with someone of the same sex, which I did every time. And it was strangers from other states, not the coworkers you regularly work with. They also had you go door to door, alone, in unfamiliar areas and did absolutely nothing when women complain of sexual harassment. Garbage organization.
I once arrived at midnight to the hotel for a conference, only to discover they were overbooked and wanted to put me in the same room as my manager. Both of us women, but Patricia had already made creepy semi-sexual comments to me before. I made it very clear that this was not on, and eventually the hotel provided me with a room to myself. The conference was called the Low-End Serial Printer Conference and was just as boring and tedious as the name suggests. However, the vendors took us out for drinks afterwards, which made up for a lot.
Used to work for a university as an admin for a difficult professor. One trip, I booked 3 rooms for her and her 2 postdocs. One never showed up. He was kind of a weird dude who wasn't big on communication or hygiene, so I thought he maybe flaked. They get back and I ask the professor, and she's mad I booked 3 rooms. She had them share. I just felt bad for the normal guy.
But only once a year when they flew everyone out to headquarters. And then the roommate situation was a big deal. You could provide a list of folks you were comfortable with, and men and women weren't placed together. Still a fucking shitty idea, but it does happen when companies are cheap.
My now wife and I started dating while we worked together at a tech startup. A few months after we started dating, we had a conference for work, and we told them we could just share a room. They said we had to each have a room, but we could just leave one empty if we wanted. They also made us sign a paper saying we wouldn't hold them responsible if anything bad happened between us. We thought it was funny, but I get why they do it. I've heard so many horror stories about colleagues fooling around and bad shit happening.
The girl, she was barely 24 at the time, in my job before me, was hired to replace a much older guy in his 60s. They worked alone together in the same room, same lab, and on week-long fieldwork trips. It took people months to figure out that they were fucking, and it was only confirmed when the admin lady who booked their travel got drunk at a conference and let people know they started booking 1 room instead of 2. It became policy when I joined to always book a separate room.
God, I wish my old company would listen to that. They were very cash poor and needed me and a coworker to be on site. It was utilities, which my coworker was a power engineer, so she made sense, but I was working for them in a totally unrelated field. But the equipment had been contaminated with some biological growth and was deemed a biohazard. I happen to have PhD in microbiology that I don't use anymore, so in the cash poor emergency I was tasked with identifying the growth and figuring out remediation ASAP so the local government would clear it so she could work on it.
As an aside, it was black mold, which is not as dangerous as people think, and a slime mold, which is not dangerous at all. I was able to identify and remediate it fairly quickly without damaging the equipment, but we got stuck in a single room with 1 bed. My back is shit, so no way I could sleep on the floor, and she had an injury that made it so she couldn't. We were in the middle of nowhere with just this one B&B an hour away. Very romantic location if I think about it. Didn't know this before the trip. We just built a pillow wall between us and slept head to foot. Did that for like 3 nights until one of the local guys told me he had a trailer, so I just started sleeping there. I just popped into the room to clean myself up. My wife laughed her ass off. We're poly, so she doesn't give a shit. But she was like, "Your stupid company." And where was HR? Busy getting ready to lay us all off. So they didn't care. Got back and got my papers like 2 days later. No notice, no severance.
Doesn't matter if you wouldn't do it. What matters is if there's an option for someone to do it in that situation, or even an appearance of an option. In essay cases, there's often no evidence except statements. One person with a grudge may not be truthful, or one part thinks it was consensual, and the other thinks it was SA because they had no way of getting out of the situation.
Not even the essay thing. It'd be worried about one of the employees' partners coming in and causing a scene. Even if the two employees were totally professional the whole time. That don't mean a pissed off jealous husband or wife will believe they acted appropriately.
This has to be one of the most ridiculous takes I've seen on here. Does someone also belong on a watch list for thinking that it's inappropriate to let teachers have sleepovers with their students in case of grooming or other issues? Does someone also belong on a watch list for thinking that someone owning a gun means that they might do something stupid with it if they have access to it when drunk? Does someone belong on a watch list for thinking that people in positions of authority might abuse their power to take advantage of other people sexually and otherwise? No, they don't. Those things actually happen, just like the scenario pointed out by the person you replied to. Acknowledging that some people do bad things doesn't make someone a bad person. It just means they're not naive, and they know that we, unfortunately, don't live in an ideal world.
Hell, it is even very unusual for companies to make two workers of the same gender share rooms. That's just a very unprofessional environment inherently. Even if Susan from HR and Jessica from IT are good coworkers, it's very different when Susan has to take a mega shit in the hotel bathroom and Jessica keeps leaving her underwear strewn across the room floor. It's just weird. No need to do that when the extra $400 or whatever is a drop in the bucket of the company budget.
We were on one of those one-night trips with the company that was just about eating good food, seeing alpacas. Awesome trip, really, and having fun. And it turned out some of our coworkers that was married and supposed to share a room and taken one each. So we were down a room. And they asked if I was okay with sharing with one of the other female coworkers, myself, and they were so apologetic about it and everything. Most of our coworkers got drunk AF, which is why the rooms thingy got fucked, which is why they asked the two of us, since we were similar ages and both didn't drink. We even got a gift basket the week after from the couple, since the wife had taken the room by accident, so no bad feeling there, but it was weird, NGO. About the rooms, it turned out the husband, in drunken brilliance, had locked the room and the wife didn't have the key for their room, and she had the other girl's key in her bag. So she just took that room without saying a word because she was drunk as well.
I'm going into a field where regular travel to job sites is expected and the employer provides housing, whether a hotel or company housing. I was told up front I'd be sharing a room with one other employee during these times, though it was made clear those employees would always be of the same gender as me. For some industries, housing, rooming employees together really is both more convenient and expected. It's super common for jobs that involve offshore work, for example. I'll admit it makes a lot less sense for other industries' careers, though.
My company has done this a couple of times for big work gatherings where lots of people needed a hotel room. Everyone got to choose their room partner, but it's still just cheap AF not to give people their own room. It's the main reason I didn't go.
My parents used to run a low-budget hotel years ago, and a fairly big part of their business consisted of out-of-town construction workers staying the week for a project. They generally had a company allowance for food and lodging, which they stretched as far as possible since they got to pocket anything they didn't pay out. They were all men, and they'd double up on rooms to save on costs, but that was their decision. The company didn't officially know and probably wouldn't have condoned it for the reasons you lay out.
Worked at a college, went to a few conferences, and definitely shared hotel rooms with colleagues, as well as staff from other universities I had never met before. In some instances, it was expected to share a bed, and you had to make a fuss to get 2 doubles. Students were booked 4 to a room, 2 per double bed, and some had mixed genders. That was about 8 years ago, and I left the field not sure if a lot of that has changed.